Welcome to the Wiggly Sausage Farm. This video today is about culling. I recently watched a video floating in my YouTube feed. Are you surprised it's goat related? I like to see what other Nigerian dwarf goat keepers do and how they go about raising their herds. It often gives me time for self-reflection and comparison. While I have been a goat keeper for 3 years now, I often find cool hacks or tricks of the trade. In a more remote area, it gives an opportunity to have a mentor in a video format. Following others on their journeys is an extra plus while watching. The video title I found in my feed was themed around whether the goat keepers regretted selling the goats from their farm, and then they went through each goat that left their farm and why they sold them and where those goats were now. It gave me time for self-reflection of the practices on my farm, and specifically with my dairy goat herd. I have learned so much about the dairy goat keeping in the last 3 years. I realized how much I would benefit from a video on someone's perspective and experience with what I'm about to go in depth with this video in my early goat keeping years or days. I am going to put my disclaimer in case more than 0 people end up watching this video. I am in no way saying that goat keepers or farmers who are doing this should be condemned or that they are wrong. My opinions and expectations are my own according to my perspective and my experiences and knowledge. Everyone raises livestock differently, and it is on them for how they do it. If it sits well with their souls, with their ethics and their beliefs, then that's their own life to live and practice. I am always also going to put this out there. If you don't agree with me and you don't have anything productive to say in a civil way, please know that you will be booted, blocked, deleted, and banned. I do not interact with people who don't contribute to a discussion and focus on attacking others. Now that the disclaimers are out, and hopefully you're still with me, let's get into it. The video I spoke about earlier spoke about if the keepers regretted selling their goats from their herd. That puts me to the topic of this video, culling goats or livestock in general, and if I as a dairy goat keeper regret culling my goats from my herd. Now, culling livestock is essentially selling, or specifically according to Oxford Languages, the action of sending an inferior or surplus farm animal to be slaughtered. Culling, whether it is done by slaughter or selling, is the selective process of deciding which goat is a keeper and is being retained on their farm to continue their genetic pedigreed lines or individual genetics and performance. On the reference video's farm, I am basing my video off of, they prefer to cull genetics from their herd through selling individual animals. They do not want to continue in their herd for their own respective reasons. Some included not wanting to keep bucklings, to keep numbers low, and health reasons. A good number of breeders of goats, both from registered and unregistered stock, use the selling route to cull from their herd. Some will post on Craigslist, others on Facebook groups and farm websites. Herd reductions are very common on these sites, and I participate in a lot of the Facebook groups, and I perfuse through Craigslist and personal farm pages to see what they're offering with all of these ads, since feed costs and input costs are very high in my area. I will be using these as a support to my perspective of culling through selling. I have bought registered culls from other farms' herds. Not that I knew that at the time, though. I was assured by sellers with the promise of good mothering, good kidding, and good milking lines. Good milking lines is one of my personal favorites for ads to list as a selling point. I am not saying or implying that these sellers are lying about the milk potential, but they are selling the perceived potential of the goat and not the actual ability of the goat, but advertising in a fashion that I believe is suggesting that the goat being sold will be, not might be, but will be outstanding, simply because of some of its relatives. They do this even though they know, according to their records or their experience with this individual animal, that that's not the case. I think it is important to realize that genetics are predictable, but not guaranteed, and just because a pedigree sounds good doesn't necessarily mean those genetics did what the breeder predicted when they chose to cross the two lines to produce that animal. Genetics are a game of dice. I will call it the game of breeding dice, and the outcomes are somewhat based on chance. Every time an animal is bred, us breeders are rolling those dice to see the outcome. Now, the outcome is immediate and not immediate at the same time. This requires patience, time, and resources to see the outcome in whole. What is the immediate outcome? Well, it's the kidding date. Once a kid is born from a pairing that the breeder has elected to breed, a healthy kid that is structurally sound, healthy, and thriving is the immediate outcome of the rolling the dice, the breeding dice. This is when most dairy goat breeders check for only 2 teats. I myself can usually see if there are any winged teats in my future, which is up there for one of the gene expressions I do not like. Teat size is also a good indicator at birth or in the first month after birth. Other important factors like growth rate, general health, trainability, and disposition are other factors that keepers watch in evaluating a dairy kid. However, the true outcome is the ability to retain the kids from your breeding and prove them. In a perfect world of limitless resources and time, breeders would be able to keep all kids from their breedings to their appropriate breeding weight or age, and then breed them to prove them out through their abilities, structure, and performance as well as their progeny. In the dairy world, this may take more than one freshening. Dare I say it, most often it does, which leads to more resources, time, and patience. Some, dare I say, most breeders do not always have the resources or patience to see that outcome through. I myself am in this boat every day. I am constantly updating my cull list, my breeding plans, and tweaking my goals for my dairy herd. Anything can throw seeing this process of seeing the whole outcome of the goat through. That includes hay shortages, feed price increases, feed shortages, a good kidding season, a big vet bill, a bad kidding season, weather, and other important things in my life, which could include a truck repair, or, like last year, a tornado that destroyed my roof. But I think you get the point. Life has its hiccups, and being able to adjust to that, to continue goat keeping, even if it means that it's less goats, I believe is ultimately the goal for most goat keepers. And the highest reason for culling. And this leads to having to cull the lines that are not as good in structure or performance or profitability in inputs versus outputs, or not as pleasant to keep. I informally call most goats who are no longer kids but who are listed for sale a breeder's B team. The goats breeders sell are most often never a breeder's A team, meaning that there is always something or some reason that the breeder decided to sell them. This doesn't mean that there are serious defects in these goats, but there may be issues in these goats that simply do not improve the goat breed and will not improve your herd despite of the ad's promises to do so. Very rarely in these ads do you read the seller's cons of the animal. Instead, the future buyer usually has to find these cons through their time, resources, and patience through their daily chores, and that future goat buyer thinks maybe it's something that they are doing, or maybe that goat just needs more time to adjust. I have been this future buyer of a goat that was from good milking lines or a good kidder, and was never informed of their true reason of getting rid of these goats specifically until I learned it for myself. It's not for a lack of asking. I just usually got the herd reduction reason, which is a valid one, but is also the top point of hesitation to even buy goats from breeders that are constantly using reducing herd numbers in their ads unless they are proven through records and I am able to connect and build a relationship with the breeder. Now, this isn't true for all of my goat purchases and experiences. I have worked with breeders that were very honest and upfront. I also know how to buy right, so personally I'm not out of any money that I paid for these goats that didn't end up going for their full potential that was promised in their marketing ads. And I am not regretful of any of my goat purchases. I have found that the most often breeders are selling their culls, are perpetuating this problem in another herd. And if that herd continues the trend and sells the cull animal and its cull progeny again, it becomes a vicious cycle that is not improving the goat breed, with all the sellers profiting from passing off their cull to another person. I find that to be unethical. I find that to be robbing a customer of their limited time, resources, and patience. I find selling culls to be a breeder passing their problem, of which they selectively created when they bred their animals, to another person. And I find that personally irresponsible. Now, I do have unregistered goats and registered goats from registered stock. When I sell a goat kid or a goat off of my farm, I want to make sure that I am giving my best product out, especially when it has my herd name to my customer. I never want to sell a goat that I am culling from my herd that I myself did not want to propagate within my herd in the first place to another breeder's herd to propagate those undesired traits. That is never something I personally want to do. I refuse to sell my problems for financial gain. And ultimately, it hurts my reputation, even if it's only a budding one, as a breeder, and it does not do any good for the goat breed. Any lines that create genetic anomalies, susceptibility to health issues, or heavy worm loads, poor body condition, poor performance, are all traits that I would never want to pass on to another herd. That, to me, is not improving the breed. That, to me, is not being an ethical breeder. That, to me, is trying to find a feel-good way to get rid of a problem that the breeder selectively created and making cash while they're at it. I believe that customers deserve more, and breeders should strive for more. If I choose to go forth and sell an animal, it's because I feel confident that I bred an animal that is suitable to propagate its genetics into other herds and make a positive difference and improvement for the dairy breed. And finally, how do I cull goats from my herd? And do I regret culling any of my dairy goats on my farm? Here at the Wiggly Sausage Farm, we cull through selective slaughtering to provide food for our family. We do so humanely and ethically. We home process and butcher so there is no lead-up stress or indicators of culling for the animals. Culling day starts like every other day with pets and cuddles, and I stay with and hold each cull animal until their last sign of movement. It is a very intimate process that I spend thanking my culls for all they have given me and what they will give me in terms of feeding my family. Goat meat is very delicious and healthy. Homegrown meat provides the peace of mind of the treatment, health, and diet of the animal that commercial meat sometimes lacks. I understand that not every goat keeper or person will agree with this process, and that's fine. I don't expect that. I have culled goats for declining health from old age, foot rot, mastitis, bad mothering, bad or hard kiddings, staying open for more than a year, winged teats, slow or poor growth weight, failure to thrive, deformities, poor milking performance, poor body structure or poor mammary systems, multiple teats, poor attitudes or not easy keepers, and overly aggressive goats. This is not an all-inclusive list, but it is what I have culled for as of now. I have also lost goats from nature culling them from my herd. Every goat keeper has or will experience this hard loss. When nature culls, it doesn't pick. You don't get to pick when nature culls, and it is extremely painful. All the more reason to focus on improving the goat breed to ensure while breeding, goats born have as much help genetically as they can to survive nature's death whistle. So do I regret culling any of my dairy goats on my farm? The short answer is no. The long answer is yes. I do miss some of my girls. Ultimately, I didn't want them to have to suffer in their old age, or for some of the other ones to be treated poorly or end up in a slaughterhouse through stressful means. All of my animals eat breakfast and dinner before I do. While they are livestock, they are treated like pet royalty up until their final moments here. I love all of them. But the reality is I don't have limitless resources and time. While culling is hard, man, it is so hard. It is not easy. It is hard to do. It is a tool. I cannot keep every goat on my farm, so culling through slaughter is a tool to enable me to continue keeping goats and improve the breed so I can sell goats that aren't problems but are worthy of improving other herds as well. I hope that any of this information or any of my experiences provides some thought and considerations for other people, especially in this time of financial resources where goat keepers are being affected by increased prices, inflation, and shortages. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch and finish my video.